Commander Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the red planet grow larger on the screen. The distress signal had come from the mining colony 3 days ago, and then nothing. Jake had a bad feeling about this mission, but orders were orders. His ship, the USS Defiance, was the closest to the Kepler 442b colony when the call came in. Sophie Miller walked up to him with her datapad. She was the best alien expert they had on board. Her blonde hair was pulled back tight, and her blue eyes looked worried. "Sir, the last message from the colony mentioned Vextari ships in the area. If they attacked the colonists, we might be walking into a trap." Jake nodded and looked at the planet again. The Vextari were snake-like aliens who had been raiding human colonies for months. They were fast and deadly, and they never left witnesses. "Have the Marines ready, Miller. We go in prepared for anything." The landing was quiet. Too quiet. The colony building stood empty with doors hanging open in the wind. Jake led his team through the main street with their weapons ready. A silence felt wrong. Usually after a Vextari attack, there would be nothing left but burnt buildings and bodies. "Sir, over here," called out Ensign Kate Williams from near the community center. She was young with dark hair and had only been on the ship for 6 months. Her voice sounded strange, like she had seen something that confused her. Jake ran over to where Williams was standing. Inside the community center were dozens of clear pods about the size of large melons. Each pod had something moving inside. Jake looked closer and saw small snake-like creatures no bigger than his thumb. They had purple and silver scales that seemed to change color as they moved. "What are these things, Miller?" Jake asked his science officer. Sophie Miller ran her scanner over the pods, and her face went pale. "Sir, these are Vextari young. The readings show they are maybe 2 weeks old. I have never seen anything like this before. The Vextari always take their young with them." Dr. Lisa Chun, the ship's doctor, came running over. She was a small woman with black hair and quick hands. She had been studying the medical readings on her own scanner. "Commander, these babies are in distress. Their life signs are dropping fast. Without proper care, they will die in less than 3 days." Jake looked around the room. There were 42 pods total. 42 alien babies left behind like they meant nothing. It made no sense. In all the reports about Vextari attacks, there had never been mention of them leaving their young behind. "Sir," Williams said quietly, "why would they leave their babies here? Even animals protect their young." Jake had been wondering the same thing. He activated his communication device and sent a message to Earth Command. Within an hour, he had his answer, and he did not like it. The Vextari government had sent a cold message saying the young were acceptable losses of war. No rescue ships would be sent. The babies were on their own. Sophie Miller looked sick when she heard the news. "Sir, the nearest Vextari world is 6 days away at maximum speed. These babies will not live that long without species-specific care. The galactic law is clear. Only Vextari can raise Vextari young." Jake knew the law. Every species in the galaxy followed the same rule. Only your own kind could raise your babies. It made sense because each alien race had different needs and ways of living. Humans had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, and they had never questioned this basic law. "Load them onto the ship," Jake ordered. "We will try to get them to Vextari space as fast as possible." The crew worked carefully to move all 42 pods onto the USS Defiance. They set up a special room in Cargo Bay 3 with the best life support they had. Dr. Chun worked with Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez to modify their equipment to match what the pods needed. Pete was a big man with dark skin and strong hands who could fix anything. But even he was having trouble with the alien technology. "Commander, the pod systems are not working with our power grid. The temperature controls keep failing, and the feeding mechanisms are too complex for our computers. Jake watched through the observation window as his crew struggled to keep the alien babies alive. 3 of the babies had already stopped moving, and their pods had gone dark. Dr. Chun said they were in some kind of sleep that usually came before death. "Sir, I have an idea," said Ensign Williams. She was standing next to one of the pods talking quietly to the baby inside. "When I was adjusting this one earlier, the baby seemed to get better. Look at the readings now." Jake looked at the medical display. Pod V7 showed much better life signs than the others. The baby inside was moving more, and its colors were brighter. Williams had been the only person working on that pod for the last hour. "What did you do different, Williams?" Jake asked. The young woman blushed. "Nothing special, sir. I just talked to it while I worked. My little brother used to get scared during storms, so I guess I treated it the same way. I told it everything would be okay and that we were trying to help." Dr. Chun looked at her scanner readings again. "Commander Williams is right. This baby is doing much better than the others. Its stress levels are down, and brain activity is more normal." Jake stared at the pod where the small alien baby was moving around. According to everything they knew about galactic law, what Williams had done should not have helped. Only Vex Thari. We're supposed to understand how to care for Vex Thari young. But the proof was right there on the medical scanners. "Doctor, how long do we have before more of them start dying?" Jake asked. "Maybe 12 hours, sir. After that, we will start losing them fast." Jake made a decision that would change everything. It went against every rule and law he had learned about dealing with alien species. But 42 babies were dying, and his crew might be the only ones who could save them. "All right, people, listen up. We are going to try something that has never been done before. I want volunteers to take shifts with these babies. Talk to them, watch them, treat them like any baby that needs care. I know this goes against galactic law, but I am not going to let children die if we can help them." The crew looked at each other with surprise. What Jake was asking could get them all in serious trouble with Earth Command and the Galactic Council. Cross-species child care was strictly forbidden. But one by one his crew stepped forward to volunteer. Sophie Miller nodded first. "I will. Take the first shift, sir." Ben Williams raised her hand, followed by Dr. Chun and Pete Rodriguez. Even the Marines wanted to help Dot as the crew began their impossible mission. Jake wondered if they were making a terrible mistake. But as he watched Ensign Williams gently touched Pod V7 and saw the baby inside reach toward her hand, he realized they might be about to discover something amazing. Something that would change how the galaxy thought about taking care of children forever. The first night was the hardest. Jake Harrison could not sleep knowing that alien babies were dying just 3 decks below his quarters. Every hour Dr. Chun sent him reports on their condition. By morning they had lost 2 more babies, but something strange was happening with the others. Jake walked into cargo Bay 3 and found his crew had turned it into something that looked like a nursery. They had dimmed the lights, and someone had brought soft music from the entertainment systems. Ensign Williams was sitting next to a group of pods, humming a lullaby her grandmother used to sing. The babies in those pods were moving more than the others. "Commander, you need to see this," Dr. Chun called from her medical station. Her eyes were bright with excitement. "The babies that have had human contact are showing much better vital signs. Their stress hormones are dropping and brain activity is increasing." Sophie Miller was kneeling next to another group of pods with her scanner. She looked up at Jake with wonder in her voice. "Sir, I think they can sense our emotions somehow. When I was worried about the temperature controls, baby V12 got more agitated. But when I calmed down and spoke gently, it settled down too." Pete Rodriguez had built small toys from spare parts and was showing them to the babies through the clear pod walls. The little aliens seemed fascinated by the moving colors and shapes. Commander, I never thought I would be playing with alien babies, but look how they respond. They are definitely intelligent. Jake watched his crew work with the alien young and felt something he had never experienced before. These tough space Marines and scientists were acting like new parents. They spoke in soft voices and moved carefully around the pods. When one baby seemed distressed, the whole crew would gather around to help. Dr. Chun, how long has it been since we lost one? Jake asked. 18 hours, sir. The longest gap since we found them. And look at this. She showed him her medical readings. The babies are not just surviving, they are growing faster than normal. According to Vexthari medical data, they should not be this active for another week. Jake could hardly believe what he was seeing. His crew had no training in alien childcare. They were just treating the babies like any human child who needed help. But somehow it was working better than anyone had expected. Lieutenant Miller came over with more surprising news. Sir, I have been studying their feeding patterns. The babies seem to prefer when we talk to them while they eat. 5 to 7 will not eat at all unless Williams is there. And V-23 only settles down when Rodriguez plays his music. This was impossible, according to everything Jake knew about galactic law. The species nurturing protocol had been created by the wisest minds in the galaxy. It said that each race had special needs that only their own kind could understand. Cross-species child care was not just forbidden, it was supposed to be harmful to the young, but the evidence was right in front of him. The alien babies were not just surviving under human care, they were thriving. Jake made another decision that would have shocked his superiors. He ordered his crew to continue their experiment and document everything. Over the next 2 weeks, amazing things happened. Babies began to recognize individual humans and would get excited when their favorite caregiver came near. They learned to play simple games and seemed to enjoy human music, especially lullabies and soft songs. Ensign Williams had become particularly close to baby 5 to 7. The little alien would curl up near her hand when she touched the pod, and its colors would become bright and happy. Williams started calling it Violet because of its purple scales. Sir Violet is trying to copy the sounds I make, Williams reported one day. Listen to this. She made a soft clicking sound, and the baby responded with its own version of the same sound. I think it is trying to talk to me. Dr. Chun was documenting every detail of the baby's development. Commander, they are learning at an incredible rate. Their brain development is weeks ahead of normal Vexthari patterns. Whatever we are doing is not just keeping them alive, it is making them smarter. Jake knew they could not keep their experiment secret forever. Earth Command would want reports, and the Galactic Council had inspectors who checked on all human activities. But every day the babies grew stronger and more responsive to human care. The crew had divided into natural care teams. Williams and Miller handled feeding and basic care. Rodriguez and his engineers created toys and entertainment. The Marines provided security and helped with the more active babies. Dr. Chun monitored their health and development. What surprised Jake the most was how much his crew had changed. These were hardened space veterans who had seen combat across the galaxy. But caring for the alien babies had brought out a gentleness he had never seen before. They spoke more softly, moved more carefully, and seemed genuinely happy for the first time in months. Commander, I need to tell you something, Dr. Chun said privately one evening. These babies are not just developing normally, they are exceeding every benchmark we have for healthy Vexthari young. Their immune systems are stronger. Their neural development is advanced, and they show emotional responses that are not supposed to develop for months. What does that mean, Doctor? Jake asked. It means either we are incredibly lucky or human child care methods are actually superior to Vexthari methods. And if that is true, then everything the galaxy believes about species-specific nurturing might be wrong. Jake looked through the observation window at his crew, caring for the alien babies. Williams was teaching Violet to play peekaboo through the pod wall. Rodriguez was showing a group of babies how his tools worked. Miller was reading to them from a children's book she had found in the ship's library. The babies were clearly happy and healthy. They had grown twice as much as they should have in 2 weeks. Their colors were bright, and their movements were quick and playful. Most importantly, they showed no fear of humans. Instead, they seemed to trust their caregivers completely. "Doctor, what happens if the Galactic Council finds out what we are doing?" Jake asked. "We could all be charged with violation of the species nurturing protocol. The punishment could be exile from galactic space or worse. But, Commander, I have never seen healthier babies of any species. What we are doing here is not harmful. It is miraculous." Jake made his final decision about their secret experiment. They would continue caring for the babies until they could find a way to prove that human child care was not just acceptable, but beneficial. He had no idea how to do that, but he knew he could not abandon the babies now. As he watched Violet respond to William's voice with obvious joy, Jake realized they had discovered something that could change the galaxy forever. Love and care were not limited by species. They were universal forces that could bridge any gap between different kinds of life. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready to learn this truth. 3 weeks had passed since Jake Harrison and his crew began their secret experiment. The alien babies had grown into active youngsters who could move around their pods and make complex sounds. What had started as a desperate attempt to save dying children had become something no one expected. Jake stood in the nursery watching Petty Officer Nick Carter teach the babies simple games. Carter was a big man with gentle hands who had surprised everyone by becoming one of the best caregivers. He had created puzzles from ship parts that the young aliens loved to solve. "Commander, look at this," Carter called out excitedly. He held up a simple shape-sorting toy he had made from metal scraps. Baby V-15 was trying to put square pieces into square holes through its pod wall. It figured out the pattern in just 3 tries. The medical database says Vexthari Young should not be able to do this for another month. Dr. Chun appeared beside Jake with her daily report. Her face showed amazement and worry at the same time. "Sir, the development rates are incredible. Every baby is performing above normal levels in every category. Motor skills, cognitive development, social responses, everything is accelerated." Jake nodded, but he could see the concern in her eyes. "What is worrying you, Doctor?" "Sir, we cannot hide this much longer. The babies are making sounds that carry through the ship's air systems. The crew who are not part of our experiment are starting to ask questions. And yesterday, I caught Engineer Davis looking through the nursery window." Jake had been dreading this moment. Word was spreading through the ship that something unusual was happening in Cargo Bay 3. Soon someone would report to Earth Command, or worse, someone would contact the Galactic Council directly. "Commander, we have another problem," Lieutenant Miller said as she joined them. "I have been monitoring galactic communications. There are rumors about humans attempting illegal cross-species child care. Someone has been talking." Before Jake could respond, the ship's communication system activated. The message was in the mechanical voice that meant it came from the Galactic Council itself. "USS Defiance, you are ordered to return to Earth immediately. Inspector Zeth Carr of the Altarian Authority will meet you upon arrival to investigate reports of species nurturing protocol violations." The nursery went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. The Altarians were the most rigid species in the galaxy when it came to following laws. Inspector Zeth Carr was known for his harsh punishments of anyone who broke galactic regulations. Jake looked around at his crew and saw fear in their eyes, but also determination. Over the past weeks, these alien babies had become like family to them. The thought of giving them up or seeing them die was unbearable. "Sir, what do we do?" Ensign Williams asked. She was holding her hand against Violet's pod, and the baby was pressed against the wall, trying to touch her through the clear material. Jake made a decision that surprised even himself. "We continue as planned. The babies need us, and we will not abandon them. When we reach Earth, we will present our evidence to the inspector and hope the truth is enough." Dr. Chun began preparing detailed medical records of every baby's development. Miller documented their behavioral changes and learning patterns. Rodriguez recorded videos of the babies playing and responding to human voices. They would need proof that their experiment had been successful. The journey back to Earth took 5 days. During that time, the babies continued to grow and learn at an amazing rate. They had begun to recognize their names and would respond when called. Some could even make sounds that seemed like attempts at human words. Williams spent most of her time with Violet, who had become incredibly attached to her. The little alien would become distressed whenever Williams left the nursery, even for a few minutes. "Sir, I think Violet sees me as its parent," Williams told Jake. "The way it looks at me and tries to communicate feels just like how my baby nephew acts with my sister." When they arrived at Earth orbit, Jake received orders to dock at Station Alpha, where Inspector Zethkar was waiting. The Altarian inspector was exactly what Jake expected. Tall and metallic, with glowing blue eyes and a voice that sounded like a computer. He showed no emotion as he boarded the USS Defiance. "Commander Harrison, you stand accused of willful violation of the species nurturing protocol. These charges carry severe penalties, including exile from galactic space. You will surrender the Vexthari juveniles immediately for proper disposal." "Disposal?" Jake asked with anger in his voice. "The juveniles have been contaminated by exposure to human care methods. They cannot be returned to Vexthari society and must be euthanized for the safety of both species." Jake felt his crew tense behind him. The idea of killing the babies they had cared for and loved was unthinkable. "Inspector, I request that you examine the juveniles before making any decisions. Our medical records show they are healthy and developing." Normally, Zethkar's mechanical voice showed no interest. "Commander, the law is clear. Cross-species nurturing always results in psychological damage to the young. No examination is necessary." But Jake was not giving up. "Then explain this." He activated the nursery cameras and showed the inspector live footage of the babies playing and learning. The little aliens were active alert and obviously happy as they interacted with their human caregivers. For the first time, Zethkar seemed uncertain. "This is impossible. These juveniles should be catatonic or dead from improper care. What have you done to them?" "We gave them love," Williams said, stepping forward. "We treated them like any babies who needed care, and they responded just like any children would." Dr. Chun presented her medical data. "Inspector, these juveniles show development rates that exceed normal Vexthari benchmarks in every category. They are not damaged, they are thriving." Zethkar studied the data with his glowing eyes. Jake could see the inspector's rigid certainty beginning to crack. Everything the Altarian believed about species-specific care was being challenged by the evidence in front of him. "I must see these juveniles myself," Zethkar finally said. Jake led the inspector to the nursery, where his crew continued their daily care routines. The moment they entered the room, the babies became excited. They recognized the voices and movements of their human family and pressed against their pod walls, trying to reach them. Violet immediately focused on Williams and began making the happy chirping sounds that meant it wanted attention. Other babies responded to their favorite caregivers with obvious joy and affection. Zeth (Kar) stood frozen watching the scene. His mechanical worldview could not process what he was seeing. These alien babies were not just healthy, they were emotionally bonded to their human caregivers in ways that should have been impossible. "Inspector," Jake said quietly, "does this look like contamination to you, or does it look like a family?" The question hung in the air as Zethkar struggled to reconcile what he was seeing with everything he had been taught about the nature of child care across species. The rigid inspector was about to face a truth that would shake the foundations of galactic society. Inspector Zethkar spent 3 hours in the nursery, watching the human crew care for the Vexthari babies. His mechanical face showed no emotion, but Jake could tell the rigid Altarian was deeply troubled by what he saw. The babies were obviously healthy, happy, and strongly bonded to their human caregivers. "This should not be possible," Zethkar said in his computer-like voice. "Every scientific study confirms that cross-species nurturing causes severe psychological damage. Yet these juveniles show no signs of distress." Dr. Chun stepped forward with her medical scanner. "Inspector, would you like to examine the babies?" "Yourself. The readings will show that they are not just healthy, but developing ahead of normal Vexthari schedules." Zethkar took the scanner and moved from pod to pod, checking each baby. His glowing blue eyes grew brighter as he read the data. "Impossible. These development rates exceed even the best Vexthari nursery facilities. How did primitive human methods achieve such results?" Jake felt his temper rise at being called primitive, but he kept his voice calm. "Inspector, we did not use any special methods. We simply treated these children with love and care. We talked to them, played with them, and made sure they felt safe." The word love seemed to confuse Zethkar. Altarians were logical beings who did not understand emotional concepts well. "Define this term love in scientific measurements." Ensign Williams answered before Jake could speak. "You cannot measure love, Inspector. It is not about science or data. It is about caring for someone more than you care for yourself. It is about wanting them to be happy and safe, even if it costs you everything." As if to prove her point, Violet pressed against its pod wall and made soft chirping sounds toward Williams. The little alien clearly recognized her voice and wanted her attention. Williams placed her hand on the pod, and Violet curled up next to it. "The juvenile shows attachment behavior toward you," Zethkar observed. "This could indicate psychological dependence, which is classified as damage under galactic law. Or it could indicate trust and affection," Dr. Chun said firmly. "Inspector, I have studied child development across dozens of species. What I see here is not damage, it is healthy emotional bonding. These babies know they are loved, and they love in return." Zethkar was silent for several minutes, processing what he had seen and heard. Finally, he spoke. "I must report these findings to the Galactic Council. This case requires judgment from the highest authorities." Within days, Jake and his crew were ordered to appear before the full Galactic Council on the capital world of Nexus Prime. It would be the first time in galactic history that humans had been charged with violating the species nurturing protocol. The council chamber was massive, with representatives from hundreds of different worlds and species. Jake had never felt so small as he walked to the center of the room with his crew beside him. The 40 alien babies had been brought in special transport pods that allowed the council to observe them. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez represented Earth in the proceedings. She was a tough woman with silver hair who had fought for human rights in the galaxy for 20 years. "Honorable council members, we are here to present evidence that challenges the very foundation of the species nurturing protocol." The chamber erupted with angry voices. Representatives from dozens of species shouted that humans had no right to question galactic law. The Crystalline Confederation accused Earth of conducting illegal biological experiments. The Hive Collective demanded that the contaminated babies be destroyed immediately. But then something unexpected happened. Dr. Marcus Thompson, a human scientist, who had been studying galactic child-rearing practices for years, stood to address the council. Honorable members, I have discovered evidence that has been hidden for centuries. His holographic display showed historical data from across the galaxy. Records of cross-species fostering that had occurred before the species nurturing protocol was established. Statistics showing that many species had successfully raised the young of other races in ancient times. The protocol was not created based on biological necessity, Dr. Thompson explained. It was created based on political fears and cultural prejudices. We have been denying our children the benefits of diverse care for over 300 years. The council chamber fell silent as representatives processed this information. Many species had maintained strict separation of their young for so long that they had forgotten their own histories. Jake was called to testify about his crew's experience. Honorable Council, we did not set out to break any laws. We found dying children, and we could not let them suffer when we had the power to help them. What we discovered is that caring for the young is not about having the right biology. It is about having the right heart. The prosecution was led by the Vexthari themselves. Ambassador Sekthara spoke with the cold precision typical of her species. These humans have contaminated our young with their primitive emotional responses. The juveniles can never be returned to proper Vexthari society. But then something remarkable happened. A different Vexthari representative stood up. This was Sage Velthis, one of the oldest and most respected members of the Vexthari government. I wish to examine these juveniles myself before any judgment is made. The council agreed, and the baby pods were brought forward. As soon as they entered the main chamber, the babies became excited. They could sense their human caregivers nearby and began making happy sounds and moving actively in their pods. Velthis approached the pods with obvious curiosity. She had lived for over 200 years and had raised many Vexthari young in traditional ways. But she had never seen babies so alert and responsive at such a young age. These juveniles show remarkable development, she said in her ancient voice. Their neural patterns are more complex than any I have seen. Their emotional responses are sophisticated beyond their age. William stepped forward with Violet's pod. Your Honor, this is Violet. She was the first to respond to human care. Would you like to meet her? Sage Velthis looked into the pod where Violet was pressing against the wall, trying to reach Williams. The little alien made soft sounds that the universal translator recognized as expressions of joy and affection. In our most ancient texts, Velthis said slowly, there are stories of the heart-sharers, beings who could nurture any living creature and help them grow strong and wise. We thought these were just myths from our primitive past. She turned to face the entire council. But perhaps our ancestors were wiser than we believed. Perhaps the ability to love and care for the young is not limited by species, but is a universal gift that some beings possess. The chamber was completely quiet as the implications of her words sank in. If the Vexthari themselves admitted that human care had benefited their young, then the entire species nurturing protocol might need to be reconsidered. Ambassador Rodriguez stood to make her final argument. Honorable Council, we ask you to judge not by ancient fears, but by present evidence. These children are proof that love knows no species boundaries. The question is whether we will let prejudice blind us to this truth, or whether we will embrace a new understanding of what it means to be a family. The vote would change the course of galactic history and determine the fate of 40 little aliens who had learned that sometimes the best parents are the ones who choose to love you. The Galactic Council deliberated for 3 days, while Jake Harrison and his crew waited in their quarters on Nexus Prime. The alien babies remained in the council chambers, where representatives from hundreds of worlds could observe them. Many council members who had never seen cross-species child care were amazed by how the babies responded to their human caregivers through video feeds. On the 3rd day, Jake was called back to the chamber along with his crew. The babies had been brought forward again, and Jake could see that Williams was nervous about being separated from Violet for so long. The little alien pressed against its pod wall the moment it heard her voice. Council, Speaker Mordon, the Ancient, being from the First Worlds, rose to announce the decision. His voice carried the weight of thousands of years of galactic law. The evidence presented has forced us to examine beliefs we have held for centuries. We have reviewed historical data, medical reports, and direct observation of the human raised Vexthari juveniles. Jake held his breath, waiting for the judgment that would determine everything. The Council finds that the species nurturing protocol was based on incomplete understanding of child development across species. The evidence shows that beings capable of providing love, safety, and appropriate care can successfully foster young of any species with proper support and guidance. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some representatives cheered while others shouted in anger. Jake felt his knees go weak with relief. They had won, but more importantly, the babies would live. Speaker Mordon continued. Therefore, the Council establishes the Universal Child Care Doctrine. Any being who can demonstrate the capacity for nurturing may apply to foster young of any species. Training and support will be provided to ensure proper care. Sage Velphis approached Jake and his crew. Her ancient eyes showed an emotion Jake had never seen in a Vexthari before. Commander Harrison, your species has given our young something we thought impossible. They have learned to trust beyond their own kind. This is not a violation of their nature. It is an expansion of it. She turned to Williams. Young human, the juvenile you call Violet, has bonded with you completely. In our ancient ways, this creates a family bond that cannot be broken. If you are willing, I would like to begin the formal adoption process. Williams started crying as she looked at Violet, who was making excited chirping sounds in its pod. Yes, Your Honor. I would be honored to be her mother. One by one, the other crew members were approached by Vexthari, officials about adopting the babies they had cared for. Dr. Chun was offered custody of 3 babies, who had become attached to her. Medical care. Rodriguez was asked to adopt 2 babies who loved his music and mechanical toys. Even the tough Marines found themselves becoming fathers to alien children they had grown to love. The formal adoption ceremony took place a week later in the Great Hall of Nexus Prime. It was broadcast across the galaxy as the first official cross-species adoption in galactic history. Jake watched with pride as his crew members made solemn vows to love and protect their new alien children. Williams held Violet, who had grown large enough to leave its pod. The little Vexthari wrapped its tendrils around her arm and made soft, happy sounds. I promise to love you and teach you about both our worlds, Williams said with tears in her eyes. You will always be my daughter no matter what. The ceremony was interrupted by an announcement that shocked everyone. Applications for cross-species fostering had flooded in from across the galaxy. Thousands of beings wanted to learn human childcare methods. Orphaned children from dozens of species were waiting for homes. Ambassador Rodriguez stood to address the gathered crowd. Today we have learned that love is the most universal force in the galaxy. It crosses all boundaries of species, biology, and culture. These children have taught us that family is not about where you come from, but about who chooses to love you. In the months that followed, the changes were dramatic. Earth became the center for the new intergalactic foster academy, where beings from hundreds of worlds came to learn childcare techniques. Human families opened their homes to alien children, while human children found new families among the stars. Jake received the Galactic Medal of Honor, but his proudest moment came during the first graduation ceremony at the Foster Academy. He watched as crystalline fragments found homes with human families who learned to sing the resonant frequencies that comforted them. Human children thrived in Altarian precision learning environments that enhanced their analytical abilities. Rigid barriers between species began to dissolve, replaced by a new understanding of what it meant to be a family. Children who grew up in cross-species homes became natural ambassadors, helping their different worlds understand each other better. Williams had moved to Earth with Violet, who was now a healthy, active youngster learning to speak both English and Vexthari. The little alien attended human schools, but also learned about her birth culture from Vexthari teachers. She was the first of a new generation who would grow up seeing diversity as normal and wonderful. "Mommy Kate," Violet said one day using the human words she had learned, "why did my birth people leave me behind?" Williams hugged her daughter gently. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes because they are afraid of things they do not understand. But you were meant to be with us. Love brought us together. Jake visited them often and marveled at how normal it had become to see human and alien children playing together. Violet taught her human friends Vexthari games while learning Earth customs from them. She was equally comfortable in both worlds and helped bridge the gap between species. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Wars became less common as species who shared children found it harder to fight each other. Trade increased between worlds connected by adoptive families. Cultural exchange flourished as young beings grew up understanding multiple ways of life. Dr. Chun published her research on cross-species child development, which became required reading at every major university in the galaxy. Her studies showed that children raised in diverse families developed stronger problem-solving skills, greater empathy, and better communication abilities than those raised in single-species environments. Pete Rodriguez opened a toy manufacturing company that created playthings suitable for children of any species. His designs were based on universal concepts of fun and learning that worked regardless of biology. The company became hugely successful and helped fund more foster programs across the galaxy. 10 years after the trial, Jake stood in the main hall of the Foster Academy, reading the motto that had been suggested by Violet and inscribed in every language in the galaxy. "Love knows no species." The words were simple, but they had revolutionized how civilizations thought about family and belonging. The Academy processed thousands of applications every year from species wanting to learn human childcare techniques or offer homes to orphaned children. What had started as a desperate attempt to save 40 dying babies had become a galactic movement that touched every world. Jake often thought about how close they had come to letting those babies die because of rigid laws and ancient fears. The crew of the USS Defiance had simply followed their hearts and treated alien children like any children who needed help. That simple act of compassion had changed the course of all galactic history. The revolution had been quiet, gentle, and unstoppable, just like the humans who started it. No armies had marched, no weapons had been fired. Instead, love had conquered prejudice one child at a time. The galaxy was now filled with families that proved every day that the bonds between parent and child were stronger than any differences of species, biology, or culture. As Jake watched human and alien children play together in the Academy Gardens, he knew that the future would be brighter because these young beings would grow up seeing unity where their ancestors had seen only division. They would carry the lesson forward that love truly was the most powerful force in the universe, and that family was about who chose to love you, not where you happened to be born. The humans had given the galaxy a gift more valuable than any technology or weapon. They had shown that caring for children was not about following rules or maintaining traditions, but about opening your heart to those who needed it most. And in doing so, they had created a new kind of civilization built on the simple truth that every child deserved to be loved regardless of what world they came from or what they looked like. The story of Commander Jake Harrison and the crew of the USS Defiance became legend told to children across the galaxy as proof that sometimes the most important victories are won not through strength or cunning, but through the courage to do what is right even when the whole universe says it is wrong. They had silently proved that when it comes to raising the young, love is the only qualification that truly matters.